Tennessee Code Section 3913-116, Assault against law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse. Subsection A. A person commits assault against a law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse who is discharging or attempting to discharge the law enforcement officer's, first responders, or nurse's official duties who 1. Knowingly causes bodily injury to a law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse, or 2. Knowingly causes physical contact with a law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse, and a reasonable person would regard the contact as extremely offensive or provocative, including, but not limited to, spitting, throwing, or otherwise transferring bodily fluids, bodily pathogens, or human waste onto the person of a law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse. Subsection B. A person commits aggravated assault against a law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse who is discharging or attempting to discharge the law enforcement officer's, first responders, or nurse's official duties who knowingly commits an assault under subsection A, and the assault 1. Results in serious bodily injury to the law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse. 2. Results in the death of the law enforcement officer, first responder, or nurse. 3. Involved the use or display of a deadly weapon, or 4. Involved strangulation or attempted strangulation. Subsection C1A. Assault against a law enforcement officer under subsection A is a Class E felony and shall be punished by a mandatory fine of $10,000 and a mandatory minimum sentence of 60 days incarceration. The defendant is not eligible for release from confinement until the defendant has served the entire 60-day mandatory minimum sentence. B. Assault against a first responder or nurse under subsection A is a Class A misdemeanor and shall be punished by a mandatory fine of $5,000 and a mandatory minimum sentence of 30 days incarceration. The defendant is not eligible for release from confinement until the defendant has served the entire 30-day mandatory minimum sentence. 2. Aggravated assault under subsection B is a Class C felony and is punished by a mandatory fine of $15,000 and a mandatory minimum sentence of 90 days incarceration. The defendant is not eligible for release from confinement until the defendant has served the entire 90-day mandatory minimum sentence. Subsection D. For purposes of this section, 1. First responder means a firefighter, emergency services personnel, or other person who responds to calls for emergency assistance from a 911 call but does not include a law enforcement officer. 2. Law enforcement officer includes, but is not limited to, a post-certified law enforcement officer, Capitol Police officer, Tennessee Highway Patrol officer, Tennessee Bureau of Investigation agent, Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency officer, deputy jailer, or park ranger employed by the Division of Parks and Recreation in the Department of Environment and Conservation. And 3. Nurse means a person who is licensed, registered, or certificated under Title 63, Chapter 7. Thank you for watching. I hope this reading was clear and helped you understand the statute. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Remember, this is an educational reading and not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney for specific legal concerns. Have questions or suggestions for future topics? Drop them in the comments below. Stay informed, and I'll see you in the next video.